I don't hear a thing.
Don't worry, Larry. It's going to take a little bit. I'm going to bring us in. Wait for me. Welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and my guest today is the legendary sci-fi writer Larry Niven, father of Known Space, which of course contains the Ringworld. He and Gregory Benford have a new book out, Glorious, which concludes the Bowl of Heaven trilogy. And also today, and we'll introduce Larry in just a minute, also today we have a very special guest, the founder and creator of another universe. Second Life, Mr. Philip Rosedale is also in the house. Now, real quick, a bit of housekeeping as usual, and then we'll get right into the show. We are on the space station set today. If you arrive on Book Club, you might arrive here, you might arrive downstairs. There are teleporters all over the place made by Arthur and Schwartzman. You can teleport around. And we switch this in and out. So every show is a little bit different. And we're adding new spots every other week. We stream the show live Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Facebook, we stream it on Twitter and on YouTube. They have other shows monthly. Do check the calendar. You can click on the board behind me that will suggest guests. You can join the group, and also be aware that this is listed on the featured events and the destination guide. So you might bump into noobs who are maybe not dressed properly, or who are in the middle of dressing themselves. So please be kind, be patient with the noobs. Big thanks to my team. Linden is producing the show. Brett Linden is dealing with marketing and security. Patch, the moles. We always have a wonderful mole here. I don't know what mole is here today. Please raise your hand and say I am here. And Marianne McCann built customized the venue. Hattie Ponacek built this space station. Silas Merlin makes custom avatars. He made Larry's avatar. We're going to talk to him in a second. And Kralos is customizing all the authors' avatars. Now, let me introduce my guest, Larry Niven, author of, I don't know, countless novels, short stories, and TV scripts, active since the mid-'60s. Ringworld, as I mentioned, came out in 1970. Ringworld is, to me, and I just recently read it, the seminal, I don't know, alien road movie, in a sense, where an expedition of different, compiled of different races happens upon a gigantic artificial world arranged in a ring around a sun. A lot of people have read that, and I just recently have been converted to a Larry Niven fan. Larry is the winner, or is a winner, of all the relevant awards, Hugo Award, Nebula Award. His work is considered hard sci-fi, and I actually want to talk to Larry about what that means. According to...
I'm willing to lecture.
Yes, please, lecture us. According to Wikipedia, also, I just want to throw this out. You were an advisor to the Reagan administration in the mid-'80s. And also on Wikipedia, it says, and I don't know if this is true, in 2007, you advised the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome, Larry Niven, to Second Life. Welcome. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How does it feel to be in this avatar? What does this avatar... What does this avatar represent?
I've got this unfulfillable urge to fiddle with my avatar. It's a bad attempt to it's an attempt to make a Modi from a Modi in God's eye, using the wrong tools.
For the people who don't know what Modis are, what do they do in the story? What is their role? What is their part of the hierarchy?
Their goal is to get out of their system, or rather, their unfulfillable goal is to control their reproductive system. And that's a long story, which we told in 2 volumes, Mode in God's Eye and The Gripping Hand.
So are you trying to get out of your system? I mean, in a way, you are out of your system. You went from real life in California to Second Life here, wherever this is.
Sure. Here I am.
Ghostspeed in the audience says, can a Modi fix my coffee maker? That I don't know.
Modi mediator, no, a Modi engineer could do that, but so could Modi brownies. Modi brownies were little, rat-sized.
Now, I started with describing you as a writer of hard science fiction. Now, can you, for the uninitiated, what does that mean? I mean, how is this genre defined, and has that genre been redefined as far as you know over the years? I mean, when you started, and what is amazing, you started in the mid '60s, and you just have this new book out. I don't know, it's another 300 something pages. You're still writing. It's amazing, and you have stuck to this, as far as I know, to this genre. Or what does the genre
Writers,
mean?
I've slowed way down, but writers don't really retire. What would they do? Give up daydreaming?
They're getting
Anyway,
paid for date.
hard science fiction. I was the only new writer in the 60s who was writing as Poul Anderson wrote, and Jack Vance and the elder men who are all men and women who have died since. I had the field all to myself in that sense, and it was lucky for me, deriving from what was called the New Wave.
I was just going to ask. So this is called the New Wave, which started at around this time in the '60s.
Yes, about the time I did. New Wave was concentrate on characterization, give up normal plot lines, and do experimentation with typographical errors.
Mm-hmm.
It became an excuse for bad writing.
I was going to say typographical errors, so that's pretty good. So if you don't know where to put a comma, you can still have a career in hard science fiction in the New Wave, I guess. But hard science fiction. Oh, sorry,
in fact, the New Wave got integrated into the field. They didn't just disappear. But in the meantime, I had established a reputation.
I was just going to say, somebody here in the audience, Stella in the audience, says no plot line. Is she? I think is surprised that that New Wave is, or that's part of the characterization of New Wave, that there's no plot line. I find your books have a lot of plot.
Yes, I did not write New Wave. I avoided it.
Mm-hmm. But going back to hard sci-fi, is hard sci-fi defined as having tons of machinery invented and explained?
Stick with the laws of the sciences you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Do not make funny assumptions, or do not make too many funny assumptions, or at least know what you're talking about. That's hard science fiction. Making up your own rules is fantasy.
Okay.
And I've written some fantasy.
I read on your fandom page also that in the '70s there was you were shouted. I don't know if shouting down is the right thing to say, but a bunch of MIT students challenged you with Ringworld.
Yes.
Is that true? That what you depicted in Ringworld is not possible?
In the halls of the Worldcon, there were MIT students chanting, "The Ringworld is unstable. The Ringworld is unstable." I took them at their word. In fact, I can prove it myself if you give me a blackboard. And I put attitude jets on the Ringworld in the second book, in the Ringworld Engineers.
And that's how you rectified it.
In fact, I rectified a lot of commentary in the Ringworld Engineers.
And how I'm bringing up a slide in the back here from the Ringworld protagonists, and here in the back slide are the protagonists of the Ringworld: Speaker to Animals and Louis Wu. Tila and the puppeteer Nessus, is it part of hard sci-fi, or the creation of these different races? Is that something where you would say that hard sci-fi is better than other subgenres of science fiction? More
I
imaginative?
I would say it's harder to write, but that doesn't necessarily make it better.
Hmm.
Quite proud of some of my fantasy. Uh, you,
Because that's like,
I
as
write
I mean,
I write hard science fiction because that's where the ideas come from most of the time.
so because as a relatively new fan of your work, I mean, I admit, and I said this to you when we first met. I said, I'm actually not familiar with your work, and you probably thought, oh my God, who is this guy? I'm going to fire my agent, booking me on this show where the guy doesn't even know who I am. I knew who you were, but I haven't read any of your books. I read a bunch of short stories, but you didn't know how obsessive I am, so I caught up. And I have to say, the way you weave in those fantastical characters and all those different races there's a really great balance to it. So I mean, again, I keep going on with this genre of hard sci-fi, but it seems to me that maybe some proponents of hard sci-fi may want to get the stuff out that is realistic and based on real physics, and find the creation of those characters maybe a nuisance that they have to create in order to get the plot moving. But with your work, it doesn't feel like that. It feels that you have a lot of fun with creating those different races.
Hmm. Uh, what can I say about hard science fiction that is not obvious in the stories? Uh, you stick with the rules until you feel like breaking them, and then it becomes a little softer. Ringworld isn't hard science fiction anymore. At the time I was writing, it kind of was, but things were allowed, such as faster than light travel and unreasonably hard materials.
Eric is saying here in the local chat, I always thought Ringworld was a sort of soft-core hard sci-fi.
Yeah, it's soft in spots.
Mm. But the creation of societies, is there something in your work where you would say, I read also the Integral Trees, which is really, really awesome. I mean,
Yeah, that's
the
hard science fiction.
but it's also, but there is so much about societal arrangement and how societies function in there. In the subtext. I mean, it's
Mhm.
not overt, but if you fill in the blanks, I'm wondering if there is something that you are trying to transport, or you leave this up to the reader, what they will get out of it. But I feel there is, you're pitting these different tree dwellers. I mean, the story is about trees that float around in space, and there's different societies are living in these different trees, and they get into conflict. Meanwhile, an AI of a spaceship that is I don't know, 500 or 1,000 years old, is observing them, and is constantly deleting its own memory to keep space fresh in its hard drive. Meanwhile, these descendants of humans have conflict. What what is in your work, you would say, the message about societal arrangements here, or is there a coherent
I was
outlook that you're trying?
describing I was describing humanity and describing the universe as best I understand it. And I had this neat new idea. It usually starts with a neat new idea uh, that I got while watching the first probe to send back pictures of Saturn at Jet Propulsion Laboratories. Uh, they offered they offered opinions as to how Titan had kept an atmosphere, and the answer was yes, Titan is too small to hold an atmosphere, but it loses atmosphere into orbit around Saturn, and the molecules eventually wind up back on the planet. So Titan has 1.5 times the surface pressure as Earth's.
Mhm.
That seemed like a neat situation, and I took it to an extreme with a neutron star at the center, and a gas giant planet losing atmosphere into a ring thick enough to breathe.
Mm.
Beyond that, everything I know about human beings suggests that that the society would have worked.
Mm-hmm. And it does work, and I actually think it has a kind of a peaceful message when they. I mean, there's conflict, but then they kind of sort it out, and then they live together. If you're just tuning in on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, we're listening to Larry Niven. Larry Niven is guest here on the Second Life Book Club, and a little bit later, Philip Rosedale, founder of Second Life, will join us on stage, and we'll open up the conversation with Philip about world creation, virtual world creation, or creation of worlds on the page with words. Now, Larry, when we did the onboarding in Second Life, what was interesting to me, there's you have a lot of fans, also people in science, and there are a lot. If you look around, there's a lot of papers written based on your fiction that explain the viability of what you're proposing in an academic setting, and it was interesting what you said to me was that sometimes you're not even aware that a student or a professor is talking about your stuff. Is that true? They don't email you or they don't call you. It's like, hey, Mr. Nim, I did something here, and how do you find out?
Some let me know, and some don't. And sometimes a reader finds something he's willing to pass on.
Hmm.
And there's a collaborator named Greg Benford who is good at finding reviews and passing them on to me.
And I believe Gregory is actually a trained physicist. He is.
Yes, he's a plasma physicist.
Right, he's professor emeritus at UC Irvine, and I should say Gregory Benford, your co-author of the new book, is right here on the table. By the way, Glorious, could not be with us, and we wish him and his wife all the best. And I hope he comes back because he has an awesome avatar. And then Larry, you and him, you can explore. So I will weave in questions from the audience as we're talking. And there's a question here from Stella. Would you say that your background in mathematics has helped shape your science fiction writing? I have a friend that says mathematics is the umbrella for all science research.
I'm sure my background in mathematics has shaped my writing. I'd be hard pressed to tell you how. The only immediate use of mathematics was a short story, and also Ringworld. Ringworld is subject to mathematics. I was lucky in finding a book that had a formula for rotational energy that allowed me to determine the correct speed of spin for the Ringworld. That's 770 miles per second. And other factors in the Ringworld are straight math.
And Scarlett here in the audience says, can you tell us a little bit about Glorious? We're going to get to it, and we're going to hear Larry read as well. So I found in my preparation here another thing that I want to throw up on the screen here in the back, because this is just fan art of the Ringworld puppeteer, which I find so cool. And again, the avatar that you're wearing, the Modi avatar, was made by Silas Merlin, and I'm really surprised that nobody has made a puppeteer avatar, or Nessus is the name of the character in Ringworld in the first book, and he's here on the big screen in the back, and I could not find who who made this. This Pearson's Puppeteer. It's from DeviantArt via Pinterest.
A
And
great
shame on
many
them.
artists have done Pearson's Puppeteers, and a great many have done the Ringworld. I've been lucky with my artists.
Yeah, but you have this description again. I mean, I'm going back to this, which is fascinating as someone who, like you, who is fascinated with the science of it. Your characters and the alien races are just really delicious. Is there a movie in the making? Do you have any movie deals? Because it's
Uh,
confusing online. There's a lot of confusing information about a Ringworld series on Netflix.
yeah, the Ringworld, I think, has been canceled yet again.
Oh boy.
But there is an option about to happen for Inconstant Moon,
Uh-huh.
which Inconstant Moon has already appeared as an Outer Limit episode years and years ago.
Did you write that?
Yes, Inconstant Moon, sure.
I mean,
didn't
for
write the
TV, for
script,
the
no.
Outer Limits. Yeah.
I did not write the script, but I was in telephone contact with the scriptwriter throughout.
It's interesting. Joe Haldeman was in my other previous show in Sanser in a VR, a social VR world, and he's coming back in October and told me that the Forever War was optioned, I think, at the same time when it was published, and it's still not made. So
Yeah.
I guess that's the reality of these things.
Yeah, it takes some luck, but things do happen.
Here's a question from Cayenne in the audience, and this is a wonderful question, and people can actually IM me privately questions, and then I'll pose them. But her question is, what is your favorite book cover? And as I was looking around, and if the camera can zoom in on the table again, I put a bunch of props out here, older covers, and those covers are wonderful. I mean, a lot of them, I guess, are from the first editions here. But do you collect your books of different covers? Do you have
I
a
have
favorite
some
cover?
covers, yes.
Huh?
I have the Integral Trees and the Smoke Ring covers. I think the Integral Trees is my favorite. And there are some. I've got maybe 4, maybe 5 Ringworld covers.
Yeah,
All
there's
different.
tons of them out there, but even Integral Trees, I think, has a bunch of different ones.
The Integral Trees, they keep publishing the one by Michael Whalen. That's the one I've got.
Mm-hmm. Michael Whelan also cover artist for a lot of Ted Williams's books. Now let's shift gears to the new one here, and I'm bringing it up and I'm making it bigger because in Second Life we can. Oops, there's some wrong mapping on this one. Uh-oh. Look at this. This is not. There is a floating book in the air, which I'm going to delete, and I'm going
I
to
don't
bring
see
up
it myself.
Wait, I'll bring it up right in front of you here because we can. Here we go. Let's make it really big. Uh-oh. I can't make it big. I can't make it big, but it looks strange when I make it big. Here we go. Now, there we talking here. Gregory Benford and Larry Niven, Glorious. This concludes a trilogy, and if you read the sleeve, it reads there is stuff about an immense artifact similar to Earth, but bigger with alien inhabitants, and humans confronted with these alien inhabitants. Now, Larry, let's be honest here. Are you just recycling Ringworld with this book?
No. Think of it this way. Within the hard science fiction field, there's a conversation going on, and it includes some scientists too. Freeman Dyson developed the concepts behind Dyson spheres. I looked at a Poul Anderson Dyson sphere, which is he was talking about essentially a golf ball 93 million miles in radius with a sun at the center. I look at that, I realize you can't actually generate gravity, according to Einstein. So the only useful part of a Dyson sphere is what you can spin, the equator.
Can you
So
quickly
the Ringworld
define
is
Dyson sphere? Because I brought it up. Can you say what a Dyson sphere is? I just brought it up here on the overhead screen. This is from a slide deck by Gregory. He sent me a slide deck, and I'll share the complete slide deck also in the local chat. Couldn't get it to work, so
that's good. Dyson sphere is a wonderful concept. Derives from Dyson took his lead from Olaf Stapledon, who wrote of wrappings of using all of the power of a sun. If you could use all of the power of a sun, you'd have to interrupt the sunlight and then radiate it at lower temperatures as waste heat. This is something we could see with a telescope. We could see Dyson spheres. We wouldn't have to wait for aliens to want to contact us. We'd know they were there. There are attempts ongoing to see Dyson spheres. What Dyson conceived was O'Neill colonies, sort of artificial habitats of any description, blocking out sunlight until there was none to escape. The concept is Dyson's. The obvious move from there is a ping pong ball 93 million miles in radius with a sun at the center, and you use gravity generators to terraform the inside. It's always noon, but you can otherwise make it very like Earth, and it would be up to a billion surface times the surface area of the Earth.
And I brought up the slide here from the O'Neill cylinder colony. This is a picture here where you can see the inside where there would be terraforming, and there are landscapes here and vast meadows and lakes and rivers running through. So this is a way to colonize, and I have to ask you on behalf of all other people like myself who are trained in arts that are not the sciences. Is this a concept to colonize space?
No, it isn't. If you can't get to other stars, that's when you build a Dyson sphere.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is any alien race that is industrial is going to expand their numbers until they need a Dyson sphere to capture all of the power of their suns.
I see. So this
you don't have to do that if you can have interstellar travel. It's cheap.
Right. This is a way to conserve the energy that is that comes from the sun and makes life possible, to orient everything around it.
Yes.
Arjun here in the chat says that Dyson's brother made vacuum cleaners. I don't know if that's...
Say again?
Is it true that Dyson's brother made... Is this the guy from the vacuum cleaner business? Or his brother? No.
I think you're making another joke.
This is... I'm reading from the audience. This is not one of mine.
Oh. No, I don't think that was the same Dyson. They may be related. I'd be surprised if they weren't somewhat related.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one goes in outer space and one goes into inner space with a vacuum cleaner. I would contend that the Miele vacuum cleaner, German company, are superior to Dyson's, but that's just me. Um, I'm bringing up another slide from Gregory, and again, I put the full slide deck here that Gregory Benford, your co-author, sent to me. I put it in the local chat for folks. Now, if you look at this image here, there is a big fireball pushing through. It looks like a cotton swab, but on fire, going through a hole in a cut-up sphere. Now, what does this depict?
I can't see what you're displaying, Drax.
Right, I thought you saw this the slide deck earlier.
But if it sounds like you've got a picture of the bowl of heaven up there.
Yeah. Okay. And what? And this brings me back. What is the bowl of heaven? It actually does look like a bowl, but sideways.
Yeah, you start with half a Dyson sphere, and the equator is spun for gravity, and that's pretty much like the Ringworld. The rest of the sphere, the rest of the half sphere, you plate with mirrors and focus on one pole of the sun. The sun jets a flare. You guide it with magnetic fields through a hole in the back of the bowl, and now you've got a starship. Now you rove the galaxy, and the bowl of heaven has been roving the galaxy since it was built by largely by dinosaurs, a branch of dinosaurs that had attained intelligence.
This brings me back to my original question. Is this something that where you felt you wanted to create a new universe, a new storyline, a new complete world, rather than setting this in the Ringworld?
It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
You'll notice no faster than light travel in the Bowl of Heaven series.
The reason why I'm asking, because we had a submission process and we're giving away 2 signed books of Glorious, and I put the word out a week ago, and a lot of questions came in, and one of the questions from Sasha VRRat was, how would you rewrite or change Ringworld if you knew everything that you know now? And it seems to me that this is maybe the Bowl of Heaven trilogy is maybe that kind of updated version in a sense. I mean, not a version, but looking at a similar concept, but adding different challenges to it for the protagonist.
Well, I'm
halfway through Glorious, so I'm still making up my mind what from my Goodreads review, which you will read next week.
I made my changes in Ringworld for the Ringworld engineers, and haven't done much since with the structure. Right. If I were doing it from scratch today, I believe I would not have faster than light travel, and some other assumptions too, stasis fields and the like. I'd stick with the laws of physics, because the laws of physics are what require you to build a Ringworld instead of traveling to other stars. It's just too expensive in energy to travel to other stars to expand your population.
Right. It's better to stay home.
Yeah.
Right. Especially during lockdown. Sorry, that was another bad joke. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Larry Niven, and a lot of people are watching on Facebook and on YouTube. You can put your questions in. Charles Yu is actually watching. Wow, Charles. I think Charles is also going to be guest here on the book club next month. I think we're full, so he may have tried to come in and be here, and he couldn't get in. Also in the house is Philip Rosedale, the creator of Another World, and we'll have him on the stage in just a few minutes. Actually, Philip is putting here in the local chat, better perhaps to simulate new worlds, and that's the part of the conversation that I'm excited about, and we'll start that when we ask Philip onto the stage. But first, Larry, you prepared a little reading. Of course, I wanted to have something read from Glorious, but since Larry is the boss, he's going to read something from Lucifer's Hammer. And if I could ask you to stand up and walk to the front of the stage here, we have our little reading podium with a book displayed. And Larry will, there we go. That's perfect. I'm
You're
going
going
to
to move the books.
I'm going to move the book stand. It's magic in this world. We don't need a Dyson sphere to move the book stand or a Dyson vacuum cleaner. So Larry, can you set up the, yes?
I was unable to find a copy of Glorious.
No problem.
Somewhere I've got lots of copies. I think they're somewhere in the garage, but I was unable to find them.
I think they fell off a truck somewhere on Ventura Boulevard. But that's a San Fernando Valley joke. Larry, what are you reading for us now? Lucifer's Hammer. Please set up the plot for us.
Lucifer's Hammer is a simple story. A comet nucleus impacts the Earth in the 1970s or so.
Mm-hmm.
The visuals from the book that people remember best. The best is the surfer.
Mm-hmm.
The surfer is the one Jerry keeps complaining about because I wrote it, and
we should say right. You co-written this as you have done a lot of books, right?
Yeah. In fact, it's co-written. I wrote the first draft.
Mm-hmm.
The things of which I wrote the first draft are the ones you remember from Jerry's books, and he used to complain about it.
This is Jerry Purnell, your co-writer, and actually I have a lot of questions, but we'll do this later. So let's read.
Okay, from during this scene, the comet is falling in pieces all over the Earth. Gil rested face down on the board, thinking slow thoughts, waiting with the others for the one big wave. Water sloshed under his belly. Hot sunlight broiled his back. Other surfboards bobbed in a line on either side of him. Janine caught his eye and smiled a lazy smile full of promises and memories. Her husband was out of town for 3 more days. Gil's answering grin said nothing. He was waiting for a wave. There wouldn't be very good waves here at Santa Monica's Muscle Beach, but Janine's apartment was near, and there'd be other waves on other days. The homes and apartments on the bluff above bobbed up and down. They looked bright and new, not like the houses on Malibu Beach, where the buildings were always always looked older than they were. Yet even here there were signs of age. Entropy ran fast at the line between sea and land. Gil was young, like all the young men bobbing on the water this fine morning. He was 17, burned brown, his longish hair bleached, mostly white, belly muscles like the discrete plates of an armadillo. He was glad to look older than he was. He hadn't needed to pay for a place to stay or food to eat since his father threw him out of the home. There were always older women. If he thought about Janine's husband, it was with friendly amusement. He was no threat to the man. He wanted nothing permanent. She could be making out with some guy who'd want her money on a permanent basis. He squinted against the brilliance. It flared and he closed his eyes. That was a reflex. Wave reflections were a common thing out here. The flare died against his closed eyelids and he looked out to sea. Wave coming? He saw a fiery cloud lift beyond the horizon. He studied it, squinting, making himself believe. Big wave coming, he called and rose to his knees. Corey called, where? You'll see it, Gil called confidently. He turned his board and paddled out to sea, bending almost until his cheek touched the board, using long, deep sweeps of his long arms. He was scared shitless, but nobody would ever know it. Wait for me, Janine called. Gil continued paddling. Both others followed, but only the strongest could keep up. Corey pulled abreast of him. I saw the fireball, he shouted. He panted with effort. It's Lucifer's hammer. Tidal wave. Gil said nothing. Talk was discouraged out here, but the others jabbered among themselves, and Gil paddled even faster, leaving them. A man ought to be alone during a thing like this. He was beginning to grasp the fact of death. Rain came and he paddled on. He glanced back to see the houses and bluff receding, going uphill, leaving an enormous stretch of new beach, gleaming wet. Lightning flared along the hills above Malibu. The hills had changed. The orderly buildings of Santa Monica had tumbled into heaps. The horizon went up. Death inevitable. If death was inevitable, what was left? Style, only style. Gil went on paddling, riding the receding waters until motion was gone. He was a long way out now. He turned his board and waited. Others caught up and turned, spread across hundreds of yards in the rainy waters. If they spoke, Gil couldn't hear them. There was a terrifying rumble behind him. Gil waited a moment longer, then paddled like mad, sure deep strokes, doing it well and truly. He was sliding downhill, down the big green wall, and the water was lifting hard beneath him, so that he rested on knees and elbows with the blood pouring into his face, bugging his eyes, starting a nosebleed. The pressure was enormous, unbearable. Then it eased. With the speed he gained, he turned the board, scooting down and sideways along the nearly vertical wall, balancing on knees. He stood up. He needed more angle, more. If he could reach the peak of the wave, he'd be out of it. He could actually live through this. Ride it out, and do it well. Other boards had turned too. He saw them ahead of him, above and below on the green wall. Corey had turned the wrong way. He shot beneath Gil's feet, moving faster than hell and looking terrified. They swept toward the bluff. They were higher than the bluff. The beach house and the Santa Monica Pier with its carousel and all the yachts anchored nearby slid beneath the waters. Then they were looking down on streets and cars. Gil had a momentary glimpse of a bearded man kneeling with others. Then the waters swept on past. The base of the wall was churning chaos, white foam and swirling debris and thrashing bodies and tumbling cars. Below him now was Santa Monica Boulevard. The waves swept over the mall, adding the wreckage of shops and shoppers and potted trees and bicycles into the crashing foam below. As the wave engulfed each low building, he braced himself for the shock, squatting low. The board slammed against his feet, and he nearly lost it. He saw Tommy Shoemaker engulfed, gone. His board bounding high and whirling crazily. Only 2 boards left now. The wave's frothing peak was far, far above him. The churning base was much too close. His legs shrieked, less in the agony of exhaustion. 1 board left ahead of him, ahead and below. Who? It didn't matter. He saw it dip into chaos. Gone. Gil risked a quick look back. Nobody there. He was alone on the ultimate wave. Oh God, if he lived to tell this tale, what a movie it would make. Bigger than the endless summer, bigger than the Tower in Inferno, a surfing movie with 10 million in special effects. If only his legs would hold. He already had a world record. He must be at least a mile inland. No one had ever ridden a wave for a mile. But the frothing, purling peak was miles overhead, and the Barrington Apartments, 30 stories tall, was coming at him like a fly swatter. Okay.
Larry, this was amazing. Please get a big round of applause. This is Larry Niven reading from Lucifer's Hammer here, and it's so vivid. Thank you so much. If you're just tuning in, this is the Second Life Book Club every Wednesday, 12 o'clock to 1, and then a half hour hanging out. I was just informed by my producers that we can go a little over time, so we can open up the floor as well. But now I would like to ask Philip Rosedale to join us on stage. And Larry, you can turn around and sit back down on your sofa. You have your sofa, and Philip has the sofa in the middle, which normally I sit, but now Philip can sit next to the sculpture here. There you go. Larry is going back.
Let's see. Right click. Sit here.
There we go. Boom. Philip Rosedale is with us. Hello, Philip. How are you today?
Hi, Drax. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, the creator of the two world creators. And I have to tell you a little anecdote, Philip, because when I was onboarding Larry, it was really fascinating. And we did this over the telephone. I did not have any visuals with Larry, and we did it over the telephone. And it was challenging to do this over the phone. We installed Second Life, and as soon as Larry was in Second Life, it felt to me that he was at home in a 3D environment, and he had trouble, like every one of us has, if we're honest, with the Windows operating system and with the concept of stuff being stacked, behind where we don't know if, what is behind. I mean, it's almost like a cluttered desk. So I wanted to tell you this because, there's an endless debate over difficulty of UIs in 3D worlds. But what I saw with Larry here is that he navigated this space super intuitively because it was 3D.
Yes, of course. That famous memory palace idea. Associate and hello, Larry. It's near you here.
Hello, still here. What are we planning next?
Philip, your voice is a little choppy. I'm getting the ping from the producers. Larry, Philip is the creator of Second Life. Please meet each other. I don't know, Larry, if you can see him. You have to move the mouse a little bit, and he's sitting to your left. My thoughts on this segment was...
I can't see him. He's being blocked.
By the weird sculpture.
Well,
how do I sound now, Drax and others?
I can only see half of the sculpture.
Philip, you sound great, and I have an idea. I'm going to just rotate Larry's couch to face Philip. How about this?
There's something you can't do in the real world.
It's just fine.
There you go. You can't do that on Windows 10 on the desktop.
That's great.
Philip, you were saying that, and feel free to jump in and ask Larry a question, but what you were saying earlier in the chat was interesting, that maybe we should create the worlds virtually. I mean, are you saying we should stop space exploration?
Well, who would want to ever do that? I think space exploration is wonderful, but as Larry was saying, the difficulty of reaching even the closer stars to us is considerable. I suppose at nearly the speed of light, and given the dilation of time that comes with that, I guess we could eventually travel to any star we chose if we had enough power in, say, 2 or 3 years' time, right? Isn't that right, Larry? Like, that's about how long it would kind of take to get anywhere if you had almost infinite energy.
To get anywhere, you need at least 5 years and maybe thousands. Depends on
So,
the nearest star is 4 light years away, and it's 3 stars called Alpha Centaurus and Proxima Centaurus in orbit around it.
but if you traveled, isn't it also true that if you travel at closer to the speed of light and you pick a star that's more distant, say 1,000 light years or something, the
Okay, let's
perception
assume,
of time for you is less, right?
let's assume you can accelerate at 1 gravity all the way
Right.
there to all the way halfway there, turn around at 1 gravity, accelerating to Alpha Centaurus. Uh, building up to near light speed takes 3 or 4 years.
Right.
You're gonna lose 3 or 4 years decelerating too. It's still gonna be about 5 or 6 years reaching Alpha Centaurus, and the same amount coming back if you come back.
And of course, you've got to guess which star you want to go to and hope that there's planets and life there, right?
There are other schemes. Robert Forward did studies in which you fire essentially a handkerchief built of computer elements on the point of a laser beam, accelerated up to near light speed very fast, and it arrives at nearly light speed and goes right through the system because he had a way to stop it, but it's too complicated.
How interesting! And is
See,
that what's in those computers?
You can't
mean,
learn
sensors?
about Alpha Centaurus if you use this scheme. I would not want Russia to build that big a laser, and they maybe wouldn't want us to either. So that you wind up with politics.
In the real world, it seems that we're largely limited by energy, which makes sense. You know, we can only get so much energy together in one place, and as you said, that's right. It's dangerous. I studied physics in college, and one of the professors had worked his whole life on fusion energy, and he said it's sort of a hopeless thing. I feel like I've wasted my career, not because it isn't going to work. It's going to work, but because you'd only have one fusion reactor for the whole western side of the United States or something, and that would be too much of a target for attack. And so we're not going to do it that way. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. We are learning. We keep building better telescopes and better techniques for our telescopes, and we keep learning more and more. I was born into a good age. No, let's not stop exploring the universe. You wind up with at least story ideas.
Larry needs story ideas, Philip. He's not sold on virtual reality.
I would say
You're
Larry
talking.
needs less story ideas than any of us.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What
Of
about
course.
Larry, though? Have you thought at all about simulation and the fact that as our computers get faster, we're more and more able to simulate, say, planets and let evolution happen on them? Have you considered that at all in your thought and writing?
Sure, in my thoughts, I don't have the skills to do anything with it.
Yeah,
Except
I mean,
in fiction, of course. Another Dream Park novel, maybe.
I was going to say that one of the interesting parts of the integral trees is that the AI that is running the ship and is observing how the civilization on the trees is sort of, evolving, devolving, fighting, falling in love and dying and whatnot. And the AI is, and it's a small part in the book, but the AI is constantly erasing its own memory. I found that just a genius little idea, and you can interpret a lot of things into it. I mean, is it erasing the memory because it's running out of space, or is it selectively erasing memory as we all do as humans to cope with trauma and all sorts of things?
Or altering the facts in order to keep conformed with
Yep.
with the views of the state.
Yep, exactly. I think that's probably the main reason in the book with the state, but there's so many more layers on it, talking about simulation. I love this, Philip. Why don't you take over the book club hosting, and I'm gonna I'm gonna just listen. This is very good. I like this new format. Uh, if we have questions from the audience, please shoot in the local chat. I'm also observing the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat. We have Cayenne here asking, what do you think of SETI and the ability of distributed computing to move science forward? I guess that's a question for both.
I don't know computers well enough to answer.
Well, I think that SETI is a wonderful early example. It was one of the inspirations for Second Life. When we started working in 1999, SETI, this was say before Bitcoin, for example. And so SETI was exceptional in that it was one of the at least most easily discovered examples of really large numbers of something together in a distributed fashion. And of course, in the case of SETI, it was looking at these radio signals and that was organized the noise. And that project is ongoing. Whether or not it's a waste of energy, as someone said there, I don't know. A lot of this simulation theory stuff is to some extent connected to the question of why we haven't seen the Fermi paradox, why we haven't looked out into space and seen anything. Larry, you were mentioning that you could see a Dyson sphere. There again, why do you think we don't see more? We haven't found any aliens yet.
Yeah, why? Where are they hiding?
We may be in the early part of the evolving of intelligence. Later races to come. We so want to know strangers, and we sometimes make them up. It may be that we are intended as the ambassadors to the rest of the universe.
Well, one of the big tropes one of the tropes that you see in sci-fi all the time is that the aliens just find us either too. I guess that's what you're kind of saying, is that we're not evolved enough for them to engage with us. In other words, it's a waste of time for them.
Yeah, but that wouldn't explain why we aren't finding Dyson spheres.
Mm-hmm. AI Austin in the chat is posting a link, and he says, as I mentioned in chat before we started, take a look at the 3D models of Ringworld created for the Celestia space simulator. AI Austin is a professor, I believe, at the university, and excuse me because I don't know the exact name, in Edinburgh. And you can see that here in the local chat on his blog. We're closing out the hour, and I would now turn it over to more audience questions. What we usually do is to wrap it at the top of the hour and then bring audience questions in. I have a question for Larry that is reflected in the chat a little bit, and I'm going to add it with a question by author Christopher Brown, who is an author of speculative fiction, and he sent me a question earlier it's known, Larry, that you had some freedom to pursue a writing career because you did not have the financial pressures that some of us may have because you had an inheritance. My question is, what would you propose something? This is a combined question with Christopher Brown's. Do you have any ideas how to further creative pursuits and make them a little bit more independent from those financial pressures? And one thing that keeps coming up, of course, is a universal basic income or some sort of variation of that to kind of free up folks that could be very creative but just don't have the means to do it. What are your thoughts?
I think you must be thinking of donations. And pursuing donations isn't a great way to develop your writing skills. The new writers have always had a problem. They were a problem when I got into the field, and they are different problems, but still big problems now.
Mm-hmm. You are referring. This is not necessarily what I meant. I guess you're referring to a donation system or to a system like Patreon, which is very popular in or other campaigns online with a Patreon page. You can solicit donations. Yeah. I meant more a system that would be run by a government that would give an income to people regardless of what they do with it. So that's the concept of universal basic income. People have proposed different numbers. There are different ideas, and also I think in Finland they have done research, a longer research where they found some interesting things. But that's the question is, how do we free up that creativity?
How do you like the concept of the negative income tax? Income above a certain level, you pay to keep the government going. Income below a certain level, you get additional income from the government.
Similar.
This is by me a great idea that was thought of first by the American Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame, because I don't like them, but I like the idea.
Well, sometimes even people you don't like have good ideas. I mean, this sounds like a very reasonable idea that could. I mean, Philip, how do you feel about these ideas? I mean, because you know your work is all about freeing up creativity as well. I mean, with Second Life to get people back into exercising that muscle,
Absolutely.
monetizing it. Yeah.
And Second Life, in some sense, with the Linden dollar, has been a kind of an experiment in basic income. The Second Life residents and have from the earliest days, had a steady income of money. I think of it as resource allocation. If you're building a virtual world, it contains resources. They literally take up memory, and you have to somehow distribute them to everybody. A free market capitalist system says everybody work as hard as you can, and may the best person accrue the most resources. And that works very well for making stuff, but it does have its problems, some of which we're exploring, in the modern world right now, which is, its big problem is that it generates inequality because the rich always get richer. This is game theory. It's well understood. It's not debatable. Any system in which free markets are allowed to run indefinitely will concentrate all the wealth in one person. Presently in the United States, that person is Jeff Bezos, who's as expected going to end up with all the money here fairly soon.
Not likely, but rich people do sometimes go bankrupt.
Right. I was going to say, one of the things we talked about at the beginning of Second Life was maybe we should flood it sometimes. Perhaps there should be a great storm. And of course, we didn't do that because I didn't want Second Life to be capricious in that sense. I wanted it to be a structure that was created by all of us. But I have to say that, the only way that you get something stopping at this point by some sort of an event, maybe the development of new technology, as it was started by, that reshuffles all the playing cards. But if you simply play a game where technology doesn't change over time and the external conditions don't change, you do end up with one winner event for a market system.
And there
So
are
I'm
good,
thinking about this a lot.
and I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of breaking up monopolies and just looking a little bit closer at monopolies and reshuffling the deck like that too. It's a great book by David Dayen called Monopolized, where he traces this back, and also, you know, there was some very good legislation in the U.S. Antitrust laws and such. But now we're getting into this. I mean, we could stay on this topic for hours. I want
could.
to. Me too, and I want to be mindful to Larry's time because he was briefed on the on not only the finite nature of money, but also the finite nature of time. Folks here on the stream were asking what SETI stands for. SETI stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's the SETI Institute. I'm reading here was incorporated in 1984, and it now, I believe, works together with NASA. It's a part of NASA. Keep those questions coming. Where is another? Eric said a question earlier for Larry about I forgot. Please resend it. Sai is saying for the past 150 years, capital has always been more profitable than labor, except for the interbellum. Yes, time between world wars. Good point. Eric, here we go. I worked on a project with a SETI director, Dr. Marconi. Mr. Niven, I have always loved, this is for Larry, I have always loved in your storylines and personalities as well as your personal humor. Decades ago, you attended a sci-fi convention that I was at. In a gathering there, you said that Pierce Anthony was a pen name that you created to see if your books were bought because of your name. Could you elaborate, clarify, or correct as proper, says Eric here in the audience.
Yeah, you made that up. It's total bullshit. Piers Anthony is a real person, a highly successful writer. I have had correspondence with him, not recently. I wrote him a fan letter for his story Microscope.
Mm-hmm. So you are not you're not him. That's good. Good to know.
I am not him.
And may I remind folks that, or if they don't know, if they haven't heard it, the radio program This American Life did years ago a wonderful Pierce Anthony radio story about a teenager who grew up in a dysfunctional family, and he ran away. He was a fan of Pierce Anthony. This is a true story. And he found out where Pierce Anthony lived, and he ran away to him, and Pierce Anthony took him in, and he stayed with them, I think, for a week or so, and Pierce helped him to get his life back in order. It's a wonderful story from This American Life. You'll find it if you Google it, I'm sure. Any more questions? Please put them in the chat. I'm struggling here. I'm looking at different chats here, and Philip, you can jump in with any question of yours or any commentary about anything that you want to add. Ardwin Schwartzman just paid somebody $30,000 Linden dollars. Reading here in the chat.
Wow.
What? To me? Who did you pay? Ghostspeed says, is the Ringworld computer game that was published 30 years ago considered canon? Larry, how are you involved with the various derivations of your work here, the computer game world or other worlds?
The Chaosium Ringworld game?
I guess so.
I do not consider it canon, but it was very useful to me in shaping the Manx in War series, which now numbers about 15 volumes. I quoted from the write-up on McSinty rather than having to do it myself.
So wait a minute, you took a storyline from that video game and then turned it and said, this is very interesting. So we have a derivative work of your work, And you're deriving work from your own derivative.
It's all a conversation.
Awesome. Do you play any games? Video
Excuse
games?
me, my wife is here. Hi. What?
Still at this?
We're still at this, yes. Would you
Larry will never leave.
That's fantastic.
Tell your wife, please, that Second Life is like Hotel California. There are a lot of similarities.
I can leave any time. Would you like me? Because Kim hasn't showed up yet, has she?
No, but she
Uh-huh.
Wonderful.
Philip,
I figured it
this
could be.
reminds me when a friend of mine left the mic open once and he stepped away from the desk.
As is now being re-explored in Zoom, right? All the Zoom
Oh, yes.
embarrassing moments.
Right.
They're all finding out what we've known for such a long time,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Larry, do you have to run?
I have to run soon.
All good. Then I would say last question. Put them into my direct message or pose them straight here. We'll have one question. And I also want to encourage folks or remind folks that the reading list will be out right after. You can click on any of these books. It's from bookshop.org. Leah is asking, what got you into writing in the first place, Larry? That is always a great question.
Sure it is. I ran out of options. I wasn't.
What does that mean?
I wasn't doing anything interesting, and I couldn't see anything interesting in my future, except that I kept getting interesting daydreams, and they were starting to take the shape of stories.
That is wonderful. You know, I heard a radio story yesterday about Wim Wenders. Wim Wenders is a German-born director, very famous. Paris, Texas is one of his biggest films from the 80s. And he said something very similar. He said, you know what, I grew up, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was marginally talented in music. I couldn't really get there. And film, once he realized, wow, film, this is my thing. And then he used his daydreams and put it on film.
Uh-huh.
So books saved your life, otherwise you would have been a math teacher or what?
That's a possibility.
All right, let's wrap the show. And Philip, if you want to stick around a little bit, Larry, you can
Sure.
leave. And thank you so much, Larry Niven, here on the Second Life Book Club. Again, the avatar is a Modi from the Mote in God's Eye. You can read it, and the current book with Gregory Benford. Gregory couldn't be with us. Is Glorious. It concludes the Bowl of Heaven trilogy. Glorious. You can pick it up now, and we're giving away 2 signed copies, signed by Larry, and I will announce this on the next show. Big thank you to my team, producer Strawberry Linden, Brett Linden, Governor Linden, the Molds Patch, Marianne McCann, AJ McDowell is making coffee cups with the logo on it. Now the next show, I don't have the slide handy, but the next show is Fred Nadis. Now Fred wrote a book called Space Settlers about the folks, the billionaires, the dreamers, the crazy people who are out there to settling space. Maybe Philip, you'll be back for that one. That's the first nonfiction book that we're having here. So this is going to be fascinating. Fred Nadis with Space Settlers. I'll swap out the slide in the back so you'll see the announcement as well, and you can see it on the calendar. Let me know what you're all reading in the local chat, and I also put it into the reading list. And then I will say we'll cut the stream, and I hope to see every one of you guys next week, 12 o'clock on the Second Life.